For education, up to what age in Alderney?
Well, in education, there's one school, St Anne's, which at the moment I think is hovering around 110, I think. I may be slightly wrong, but those are the sort of numbers of people. That's right the way throughout the ages. There is an 11 plus system in Guernsey, and those youngsters that are able have the option of going down to live with host families in Guernsey to continue their secondary education.
There are loads of small islands all around the world with similar sorts of populations which survive. Now, there must be, whether there's a magic formula, but there's obviously a formula by which these places, do they live at a very basic level? Is it that Alderney has to live at a,
Well, that's another of my conclusions. Certainly, the people in Alderney have learned to live within their means. I mean, for example, the classic is food. There's one boat comes in with food once a week, and so the kind of daily trips to Marks and Spencers that people enjoy in Jersey and the very, very high quality of products, that's all. None of that's dreamland for people in Alderney. And of course the range of retail projects is also narrow, and so the Alderney Guernsey Post Office main purchasing is through the internet, of course.
At the moment, anybody can go and live in Alderney?
Yes.
It doesn't matter the rich or poor. If they can support themselves when they get there, they can go there.
Absolutely.
So if anybody is watching this little video and they want to somewhere pastures new, a little idyllic paradise up...
Well, it's a beautiful island, and of course the tourism is so important there, and I've tried to encourage on every visit back. There are opportunities to buy hotels at very, very low prices, and if younger people could make a go of running those businesses, it's certainly something that should be looked at. But of course that illustrates the point. What the population that Alderney most wants is families and working families, people, doers, workers, who will be resident and locally there, and that's what's needed. Not there's anything against retirees, but nonetheless,
people are going to do
the relationship of the working population to the population is pretty important.
As far as the economic structure that's there now, obviously there has been some offshore gambling. I don't know what's happened to that.
Well, Alderney was first into the field of gambling regulation, and they've set up all of the legal infrastructure and so on. And in fact, there is and appointed commissions, properly set up commissions under the various international rules, populated with quality people. And what Alderney does, it gets the surpluses. Surpluses come to fund its capital expenditure. So there are no capital expenditure that's on local infrastructure is met through that source. So it's already an important source of revenue.
What is the key, most important source of revenue?
Oh, crikey. Well, there are local taxes which are related to property, but a chunk of that goes to Guernsey. I think the state's accounts indicates probably the local property tax.
That big strip of rock out there, which has to be maintained, the Alderney breakwater, who's that a burden on? Guernsey?
Well, I'm no great expert on that. I'm not an expert on the government accounts, but it obviously is very, very important because that's needed to protect the harbour.
That's right. So from a planner's perspective, if it fell down, it would be a problem.
Yes, absolutely.
Which was historically always the problem for Bray. It was always a very open...
Well, yes, I mean, has to, when you see the winter storms, in fact, not just the winter storms, any time when when the sea and the wind comes up, then the water goes right over the top of that breakwater.
Just before we get on to the potential optimistic future with the energy thing, which is a very interesting project, there's another little island off Guernsey called Sark, which I know you haven't lived there, but is there anything from what you know about what's going on there that relates to Alderney, relates to the other islands?
It was interesting. I was recently asked by the JP about the, if I can call it, the Frank Walker letter and so on. Was there any parallel between with Alderney? And I said no. Certainly, I don't get the impression at all that the external overtures would be welcomed in Alderney. Alderney is a community of people who want to passionately independent, want to sort out their own problems and do their very best. But interesting enough, Sark, when I visited there last, the Barclay brothers owned were running several hotels, which are clearly important, and they'd also planted up large areas with grapes. As I understand it now, those hotels have been shut for several seasons, which is a serious problem. Important part of Sark's tourist infrastructure take now. And also the land, I don't know whether those grapes are marketed and wine produced, but that land, of course, is not available to locally based sustainable agriculture. So
in Alderney, there is land available. Somebody
absolutely.
You could take any cows there. You could take jerseys there. Or
well, in Alderney, we're very fortunate. We have 2 local farmers who do local produce, and but they don't need, because of the population, to farm the land intensively. So at the moment, we have low rates of fertiliser use, very, very low nitrogen contamination in the drinking water, which is beautiful. And but there is an opportunity to increase that if the Alderney population increased. There are areas of land which would be very suitable for low intensity agriculture, yes. And I think, from my impression, they would get help and support from the community there.
I'm going to stop there, and we're now going to start talking afresh about the energy project.